is the oldest surviving film by Oscar Micheaux, Within Our Gates.
Yes.
Not his first
Um.
movie. That came out in 1919, but is lost, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So if we're going to talk about Oscar Micheaux, we have to start with this one. Oscar Micheaux being the first African-American film director, which, as far as I can tell, is like a pretty definitive actual first.
Or
Like,
at least like feature film director. There were shorts, I think.
but I think even those shorts were mostly directed by white people. I don't.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to verify any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But generally, by any historian, he is considered the first black filmmaker.
Yeah. And this is like a true I don't know. The term was used at the time called race picture, which I think is what they just used to say any movie with black people in it. Um but there were movies that were being made, as early as what, 1913, 1914, something like that, that were for segregated black audiences and black theaters, and as you were implying, mostly, or not feature films, but they were mostly directed by white people, engaging in a lot of stereotypes.
Yeah, yeah.
They were not really being directed from a perspective, like a knowing perspective of someone of lived experience,
Yeah.
really.
I think the distinction of the sort of movement in film of race films were movies by black filmmakers that were explicitly about sort of like the experience of living in America as a black person.
Which this very much is.
Yeah.
This, you can consider this a response to Birth of a Nation. It goes over, it concerns a similar period of time, at least in a flashback sequence that is in this movie, and it is depicting a kind of clan lynching of a black family in a completely opposite and more correct light than the kind of heroic portrayal in Birth of a Nation. This movie is pretty upsetting, honestly.
It's probably one of the more like harrowing, upsetting movies that we've watched on this show.
Yeah.
Like that scene in particular is like it's shot in a very matter of fact way that it makes it all the more just kind of like horrifying to look at, because it kind of just feels like old footage of crimes happening.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big shift from the sort of like very heightened reality of the German expressionist movies, which are like going so deep into like expressionism and sort of theatricality, like heightened realities. And this is like really going for realism. I feel like the point of this movie is to like impress upon people how real the sort of like racist violence is in the United States at the time it was made.
Racist violence, and also just the ways that life is made harder for black people through general racist state sentiment.
Yeah, this movie has a lot on its mind. Like it covers a lot of topics. I think like, I mean, it's definitely very much about like violence, but it is also about like education and religion and capitalism and like women's suffrage and like voter suppression and like all these kind of institutionalized things also.
Mhm.
It's a big movie. Like it gets into a lot of different topics. Sort of through
Yeah.
the sort of like central narrative, it sort of touches on all these different things.
In many ways, it's also like a really angry movie.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a movie that doesn't have a lot of confidence in the goodness of white people, even like non-clan members. There are all sorts of people who have these kind of institutional reasons to, keep Negroes in their place. It's really, it's like really cynical, honestly, which like of course is coming from a good, an accurate place.
I mean, it's cynical up until the very end when it sort of tries to put like a hopeful note on it, which to me felt kind of out of place.
Yeah, no, that rings so false to me.
Right after this entire movie, we've just seen both like very small instances of just like oppression happening to like full on murder, and then it sort of tries to kind of tie it all up in the end and be like, yeah, but like be
We
positive.
live in America, right?
Yeah.
It's the greatest country on
And
earth,
it's like,
right?
that I mean, it's the only thing that I think really kind of doesn't really work about this movie is that I think tonally it doesn't really stick the landing, I guess, in
Yeah.
like it and makes me wonder too if there was almost like pushback of like someone was like, this movie's too dark. You need to have like
Right.
a happy ending. Or if it was just trying to then end on a positive note as opposed to just because it gets so dark, especially towards the end, that it almost feels like you need something to kind of pull you out of it a bit.
Right. Yeah. The basic plot is there's the main character is this woman Sylvia who is in the north uh and it opens with some kind of classic silent movie love triangle hijinks
Right.
of that you can't have a silent movie without a love triangle. There's a character called the Leech who is like a sort of involved with organized crime and gambling. There's like her kind of like upstanding is he her fiance, I think?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some kind of complex details that like relating to like her sister or not her sister,
Her cousin.
her
Yeah.
cousin who is jealous of her and so spreads these rumors that she is cheating on him, and he just storms out immediately, doesn't listen to a thing that she says, and then he's just basically gone from the
Well,
movie.
he
But
also
like,
tries to strangle her to death, which is
yeah,
a reaction to have, I suppose.
this movie, I think that like it received some criticism from black movie critics or people in like the NAACP and related that kind of thing at the time, because though this movie like is very much, it has a point of being like anti-racist and having white people be like the center of the villainy, it is not afraid of showing black people in a complex light, which honestly is good, I think. Like there are good black characters and there are bad black characters because they are a spectrum of people. And so it like in this movie there are depicted a few like black scumbags, and people were critical of this because like it's like we already have enough trouble, like why are you portraying scumbags that are black on film?
Right, but it is almost, I feel like all the scumbags in this movie are almost like people who are kind of working against their own self-interest in a way, or at least working
Mm-hmm.
against the self-interest of like um the black community at large. Like there's like the preacher who's basically just trying to like get people to like conform in order because he's getting paid to do so
It's basically, yeah, like an Uncle Tom
by
character.
wealthy white people. There's the like landlord's assistant who convinces a lynch mob to hunt down Sylvia's.
Sylvia and her family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like all the black characters in this movie who are uh sort of portrayed as villainous or scumbaggy are sort of um representative of of like a specific type of kind of like almost betrayal. And I did find that to be a kind of like surprisingly nuanced thing. Like this movie isn't just trying to be like white people bad, black people good. Like it's really trying to get into
Which it would have the right to do at
right,
the
especially
time.
at this time when it's like yikes. But it really goes out of its way to try to be very nuanced about like weird, like all the weird like racial dynamics in America in 1920 and earlier of like and like people just trying to survive in a society that is not doesn't treat them as full human beings.
Yeah.
They're like plot machinations is very complicated.
A little overly
Yeah.
complicated.
And that's why I kind of feel like talking about the plot of this movie is almost like not the point almost. Like the plot exists to get to these different scenes that have like thematic weight.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like the reason why like Sylvia has to like go talk to like go to church and like talk to the people is like to show this preacher character and like how he's sort of corrupt. And like she like the broad strokes of it are uh Sylvia is trying to raise money for a segregated school in the South because the government won't pay enough for education. And that's like the first half probably of the movie because she eventually gets the money from a wealthy old white woman who's a philanthropist.
She has to do a heroic act to even like get the attention of this white woman.
Right. She has to get
Like,
hit by a car in front of her.
to save someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she still has her doubts about helping her.
Yeah. And then sort of in the back half of the movie, we kind of learn more about Sylvia's backstory and how her family was lynched in the South, and how she's adopted, and how her own dad tries to assault her, and then finds out that she's actually his daughter. It's a very upsetting third act of this movie. It gets very dark, much darker than like maybe anything we've watched. I don't know. There's nothing in this movie that we haven't seen portrayed on film at this point. But I also feel like this movie stacks so much of it on top of it. It's just like one scene of something really awful happening like in a row towards the end.
This like try hard DW Griffith darkness. It is like it's felt.
Right. It's melodramatic by contemporary standards, but it's definitely not nearly as melodramatic as a lot of the other like sort of serious minded movies that we've watched for the show.
Mm-hmm. I think that the real like kind of central kind of emotional crux of this movie is that flashback, and it feels so like visceral, and it makes you think about how like and because it's like tied to like the main character. This is set in contemporary times,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a main character who is remembering when she was a child and remembering her time in the South at that time, you know? And like this is a movie about like not slavery exactly, but sort of like Reconstruction era,
Mm-hmm.
this like South, and like the slavery and the effects of it. And it's made in living memory of when
Yeah.
people were slaves, right? Like this movie was made there were still people alive when this movie came out who were slaves, plenty of them, and you feel that weight of that history in this movie, especially when it does the flashback to the lynch mob in the South. You know, it's like grappling with like classic the South in the 1800s racism. It's grappling with like systemic racism of this underfunded school. The way that preacher is introduced is that the philanthropist like asks for a second opinion. So when Sylvia almost gets hit by the car, she says like, "Oh, what's your deal?" And she says, "I'm trying to fund a school." And she says, "Good, like, lucky, I'm a rich philanthropist. I'll give you like, what was it, $5,000 or $1,000?"
I think she initially offers $5,000. Yeah.
And then the philanthropist goes and asks a second opinion from a white Southern woman, a kind of young white Southern woman who thinks that like black people basically would not be able to be trusted with $5,000. So if you want to give it to a black person, give it to this preacher who I think she says the words, keeps Negroes in their place.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him delivering a sermon, which is another really complicated thing, where he is saying we black people need to stay in our place specifically because white people are sinners and we need to be pure. And if we're not going to be pure if we are like fighting for our equality, basically. But then after he gives his sermon, like he has all these financial interests in doing this, and like his place in culture and everything like that. After the sermon, he has a part, a moment where he thinks about how he's gonna go to hell for selling out his race,
Yeah.
for the things that he's
For
saying.
his own kind of short-term gains. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which is, yeah, it's so many interesting dynamics going on in this movie.
It doesn't get super in depth about any of these things, but it touches so much on like it feels very comprehensive, I guess, in the sense where it's trying to give you a pretty broad picture of just like the reality of living in America in 1920. You talked about how sort of like the effects of slavery were still very immediate in 1920. Oscar Micheaux's dad was enslaved, was born into it, which is a wild thing that humanity has gone through. And so yeah, it's like he had very firsthand knowledge of like Reconstruction era, like the immediate kind of lingering effects of that. And yeah, like you said, it feels, you can feel the anger from this movie. You can feel the kind of like,
Yeah, and similar to Birth of a Nation, but from another perspective, this movie was also banned in certain areas,
mm,
for fear of inciting riots, basically. Which, I don't know. Good on you, Oscar. I don't know. I 1 week, 1 year endorses Oscar Micheaux's anti-racism.
agreed.
Hot take. Hot take.
I think it's kind of interesting how both this and Zorro, Mark of Zorro, are American films made in 1920 about oppression, and they take such opposite kind of approaches. Where like Zorro is this sort of like light fantastical adventure movie about
Hmm.
sort of like triumphing over a like corrupt system, and this movie is about sort of just like trying to live within a corrupt system and how oppressive and awful that is.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that Zorro is pretty impressive, I think, in the time, and it's like respect for indigenous people.
Yeah, yeah. That did stick out to me. Of like, this movie is surprisingly like progressive for being so old timey,
Yeah.
which is just nice to see.
Well, I guess that'll close our gates.
Ah.